We usually picture Odin as the one-eyed god of Valhalla, wielding magic and commanding Valkyries. But historical records suggest a different figure, a mortal war chief desperately leading his people out of the path of a massive ancient invasion. In the 13th century, the Icelandic historian Snorri Sturluson wrote down a radical origin story. He claimed the Norse gods, the Aesir, were originally a real tribe of humans who migrated into Scandinavia from deep inside Asia. For hundreds of years, this was brushed off as medieval fantasy. But the deeper we look into the historical record, the more the geography and the timeline begin to align. What if this story is a forgotten historical truth? Modern scholars usually dismiss Snorri's account almost immediately. The standard argument is that he noticed the words Aesir and Asia sounded similar, and he connected them to create a false etymology. To back up this assumption, critics point out that Snorri padded his story with ideas popular in the Middle Ages, giving Odin a Trojan family tree and mapping his journey using standard Christian geography. If you stop there, it looks like pure fiction. However, a forensic examination of the actual library and source materials available in 12th century Iceland reveals a completely different reality. Snorri didn't pull these details out of thin air. The evidence suggests he inherited a genuine memory of a real-world population collapse. We are now officially reopening the investigation. Snorri was a powerful, highly educated chieftain. He grew up in an environment where Roman histories and classical Latin texts were actively being translated into Old Norse. He wasn't writing in an isolated vacuum. He used those foreign texts to explain the stories he inherited. Trojan legends provided ancient legitimacy for kings, while Roman maps gave him the academic language to describe the world. But if we strip away those Trojan family trees and the imported Roman geography, we can finally see the raw material underneath. What remains is a highly specific memory, a warrior elite known as the Aesir, living east of the Tanais River, who are forced by political upheaval to abandon their homeland and flee west. The Alans fit this description precisely. They were a highly mobile Iranian warrior society, native to the region north of the Black Sea and the Caucasus Mountains. The terminology is striking. Medieval writers called the Alans the Ass, or Aas, Asi, and Us, a direct phonetic match to Snorri's Aesir. Geographically, their historical homeland lines up exactly with Snorri's Assaland, east of the Tanais River. Snorri's mythological starting point perfectly matches the borders and the name of a real-world warrior society. In the late 4th century, the rapidly expanding Hunnic Empire violently overran the eastern territories of the Ass. This historical map traces ancient barbarian inroads. The Hunnic invasion triggered a massive westward migration of Atlantic refugees. They moved deep into Europe, embedding into Germanic regions and allying with Saxons, Vandals, and Sueves. This mirrors Odin fleeing imperial conquest into Saxland. The historical Alans survived by forming elite military coalitions and integrating their lineages into European royalty. This is precisely what Odin and his followers are said to have done. The points of convergence are stacking up. We have an identical name, the Asias, and the exact same geographical homeland east of the Tanais River. We have a displacement driven by an expanding empire, and an identical migration route directly into Germanic lands. One or two of these similarities could be dismissed as medieval authors borrowing familiar ideas, but with this many points of convergence, we can no longer assume the entire story was a 13th century invention. This transition from history to myth happens through a process called historical compression. It's how centuries of complex, multi-generational events naturally simplify into the story of a single legendary founder. Odin was not literally the biological grandfather of every northern king, and an entire intact nation did not pack up their bags and march to Sweden in one trip. The reality is much more nuanced. A small, elite Atlantic warband entered the North, intermarried, and adopted local customs. Over centuries, their memory fused with native gods to create the myth of Odin. Snorri Sturluson was not wrong. He successfully preserved centuries of real history, compressed into the shape of a Norse saga. To follow the investigation, please visit wodinsman.com.